decided she wanted to go back to church. Uh, Another one quit, said that he was joining Chabad. He's been with us. They're all new. They've all been with us about 6 months. Then last night, one of our members got offended because she was, I'd said some things about Democrats. I didn't even know she was a Democrat, her and her husband. Uh, I was like, how can you be a Democrat and be a believer? You know, the Democrats support abortion. How do you get behind that exactly?
They don't see that as that connection though.
I know, I know. Still, it is connected. Anything you support, you say you're a part of a party. It's like me saying, I'm part of the KKK, but I don't support that part where they hate the Jews.
Uh-huh.
You can't say that. If you support the KKK, you support the KKK.
So darn, let's turn in my membership then.
Membership? I thought you were the Grand Dragon.
Now you're funny.
Oy, oy, oy. What is wrong with people? Okay, you should be able to get me on YouTube now. Do you see me?
Not yet. Hold on.
I'm wearing my white cap. I got to get the guy down here, the tech down here, to fix Ustream. Because otherwise, you're going to have a. I couldn't find part two for. Uh, I'll have to find it. Try again this week. So we'll do something else. The Great Revival. Let me see if I can do the war with Syria.
That'll be good.
Yeah. There he is. Hello, Cody.
Well, I can't
Dennis.
find the live link.
Really?
No.
You should find that.
Oh wait, there it was.
Yeah, you should be able to find that.
You just said here he is.
Ah, he's on a 10-second delay. Dennis.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Not because of this. He's just naturally on a 10-second delay.
Yeah, he is. Wow.
That phone broke.
What?
Her phone broke, Stella.
Yeah, I know. She hasn't been. I haven't talked to her in days now.
Yeah, she tried to call me, but every time she calls me, I'm in class or driving.
Oh, she's trying to kill you.
She's not inheriting anything yet. She's got it all confused.
Uh, all right.
I
Let's
guess the
see.
economy over there went bad because they had to reissue all the.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, their money, they changed their money. What am I looking for? Oh, I remember. Oh, man, it's been a horrible couple days. I'll be glad when I get, probably when I leave. I was just telling we had a bunch of people down in Tacoma quit. Yeah,
Why?
different reasons. One went back to church. They're all new, fairly new people. One went back to church. Another one denied Yeshua, said Yeshua was an idol. Went to Chabad, and Chabad turned them away.
Oh,
Said goodbye. They can see a Christian coming. He even wore the long curls, but those rabbis aren't stupid, you know. Yeah, I can. If I talk to them for 5 minutes, I can tell you exactly where they're at spiritually. 5 minutes. That's all I need. I can tell you if they came from church. I can basically tell you what denomination they came from. Right? Say, oh, so what do you think of eternal security? Oh, it's good stuff. Baptist, right? That's how long it takes. You know? What do you think of the Wesley brothers? Who? Well, they're not Methodists, right? Doesn't take long at all. So you go up to Chabad acting like you're just a wayward Jew that you don't have it, just finally found religion. They talk to you about certain verses. You go, oh yeah, yeah. They know what verses the Christians use, which ones they like. If you like those, then they talk about verses that most Jews know they're growing up, and you're like, oh, I'm not familiar with that. Bingo, this guy's coming from church. No, thank you. They don't like Christians. They don't want. They don't want Christians. It's not that they hate Christians. They just know they're stupid. They don't want nothing to do with them. They don't. Why have all those hassles? That's what happens. That they from church screws them up so badly. The rabbi's looking, gets a Christian in front of me. He's like, man, this is going to be a ton of work. A ton. Why do it? How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah.
You look nervous. Everything all right?
Yeah.
How's things with you and Carlene?
Good. I'll be going down there tomorrow.
Is that why you're nervous? All right. All right. Everything's work is going good.
Yeah.
Not too bad. I saw the pictures of you welding. That was cool.
Oh yeah, my buddy Edgar Upward, he started working up there.
Yeah, I'm not really interested, but
Okay.
oh, no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. It was pretty cool. I always wanted to weld. That'd be awesome. It's a good opportunity for you. Should always learn a trade. Now, where is it for crying out loud? It must be on the. It must be the 201s, huh? All right. Let's look at the 201s. Eschatology, apologetics. There it is. Messianic eschatology is number 1. Yay, yay, it's got a teaching there. I don't have a video on it. I should record. I can't record this if I'm broadcasting. Okay, give me a second. Let's do this. I'll send you the link. Woohoo! And I'll send it to you on Skype.
Okay.
There's the link.
Hold on a minute. Yeah.
So, where are you guys? You still plan on getting married up here or down there?
We haven't talked about it for a while.
Is that right? I gotta get you guys the ketubah and get it signed. Even if it's just a temporary one. When's she coming up next?
Well, I'm going down there tomorrow, and she's coming back up with me for 3 weeks Sunday.
Okay, you guys drop by. I'll at least have you sign a temporary ketubah. Yeah?
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
So what's the teaching for?
Well, I couldn't find part 2 of the Great Revival, so we're going to do the war with Syria. Prophecy. We'll stick with the prophetic line here. So we'll start on slide number. Come on now. There we go. 93. Okay, I got to turn this overhead on for you, don't I? Ouch. Look at these baby seats.
That's all.
Aren't they cute? That's for Jacob when he gets Why is it? There it goes. All right. So today we're going to talk about the prophetic war with Syria. Of course, this is one of my dad's teachings. All the prophecy are my dad's teachings. He's an authority on it. There just isn't anyone better to on prophecy than my dad. There really isn't anyone better. I've looked and looked and looked. It's not. I know I sound biased, but it's true. I've heard people all my life compliment his teachings and how it's helped them piece together things that they've been missing concerning eschatology. So I hope I do this teaching justice. He's been teaching this one for over 20 years, maybe a bit longer. Probably I wrote this 5 years ago, so 25 years at least. So let's get into it. There are four major battles given in the Bible concerning wars with Israel in the last days prior to the millennium. There's the three end-time battles of the Lord, but before that there's a war between Israel and Syria. So the first war that we really want to look for is this battle of Syria. If that takes place, then we're getting close. Now, as you probably know, I don't believe this is going to be anytime soon. Okay, I don't think we're in the end days. I know it's very unchristian-like to not believe that we're living in the end days. But the Bible never says, not once, that we're supposed to believe that we're in the end days.
Now, how long have Christians been believing that?
2,000 years. 2,000 years.
They could pick up on it and be like, huh, maybe we should rethink this.
You would think. You would think.
I have family that my other grandma, she says the same thing. She
It's
believes
coming soon.
yeah,
It's
the
coming
rapture's
soon.
gonna happen and
Wow. Yeah, people say it all the time. It's coming soon. I've seen the damage it's done to the unsaved by Christians telling them Jesus is coming soon. Years later, those people won't step foot in a church because they think the Christians lied to them, or at the very least, they think they don't know what they're talking about. I've been told by intelligent people, they told me Jesus is coming soon. That was 40 years ago. They obviously don't know what they're talking about. So why would I entrust my spiritual life to them if they can't even get that right? It's a good question. So stop saying it. There's no commandment that says we have to go around telling people that he's coming soon. If you believe he's coming soon, fine. Keep it to yourself. Don't damage your reputation of being an individual who is truthful. Because frankly, we don't know when he's coming back. Well, the Bible says there would be wars and rumors of wars, just like there is right now. True. And just like there was in World War I and World War II. Not to mention clear back in the time of Nero when he was killing believers left and right. The believers then thought he was the Antichrist, by the way. They thought Nero was the Antichrist. Think about it. The disciples didn't even know when he was coming back. The disciples. They sold everything they had and lived communally. And then they were like, he didn't come back. They lived with Yeshua. They walked, talked, and ate with him. They knew him better than any of us. That being said, I think I know when he's coming back. No, I don't. So the first battle is this war with Syria. The second war is the war with Turkey at the Dead Sea, along with Persia, Libya, Turkey, and others. The war with Turkey will take place near the beginning of this final 7 years of man's rule before the millennium, when Yeshua will come and rule with the saints to reign. The third war is the Jerusalem War. This battle is in the middle of the 7-year period. Fourth war is the Armageddon War. It'll take place. What did I say there? The battle in the middle of the 7-year? Yeah, Armageddon is at the end of the 7-year period.
what's the third war?
The third war is the Jerusalem War, and that's in the middle of the 7. Armageddon is at the end of the 7. Okay. I got a question for Dad on this, but I'll ask him later. Okay, there are two major passages that we're going to be looking at concerning the Syrian war. The first one is Isaiah 17, 1 to 7. Okay, we can put this up. This is a prophecy about Damascus. Damascus is Damascus. Damascus will soon stop being a city. It will become a heap of ruins. The cities of Aroer will be abandoned, given over to flocks lying down undisturbed. Ephraim will have no defenses. Damascus will cease to rule, and Aram survivors will share the fate of Israel's finest son, says Adonai Zevaot. When that day comes, Yaakov's glory will wane and his full body grow thin. As when the harvester collects the standing grain, reaping the ears of grain with his arm. Yes, as when they glean the grain in the Rephaim valley. Yet gleanings will be left, as when beating an olive tree. You know what that means to beat an olive tree, right?
Like, beat it with the stick.
To make the olives fall.
That's how they get.
That's how you would. You don't hit too hard, you'll damage the tree. But you go pop up just enough to let the ripe olives fall. You have to put down a big net. And you hit them, and then they fall into the net. Then you collect up the net. Yeah, we still do it that way. I used to pick olives in Italy, and there's different ways of doing it, but that was one way that we used to do it. Okay, so beating the olive tree, 2 or 3 olives at the very top, 4 or 5 on its fruitful branches, says Adonai, the God of Israel. On that day, a person will heed his Maker and turn his eyes towards the Holy One of Israel. Okay. Now, we'll read the second passage, and then we'll go verse by verse, and later make some parallels which can help us pinpoint a few things. Let's do the next one. This one's in Zechariah 13:7-9. 13:7-9. Awake, sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is close to me, says Adonai Zevaot. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. I will turn my hand against the young ones. In time throughout that land, says Adonai, 2/3 of those in it will be destroyed. 2/3. They will die, but 1/3 will remain. That third part I will bring through the fire. I will refine them as silver is refined. I will test them as gold is tested. And they will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, this is my people. Oh, we know who that is then, don't we? And they will say, Adonai is my God. Okay, so the first thing we got to do here. Where? You get it. I can't reach it.
Oh, I hate spiders.
Teresa! He's not very big. I'll get him afterwards. I don't have a swatter out here. Yeah, I don't like spiders either. Yeah. Okay, so we want to look at the first passage, go through it verse by verse. Also looking at it in Hebrew, and there's some things that we got to point out. The first thing we notice is it says that Damascus will become a heap of ruins in verse 1. Well, one may say, so what? Well, if you know history, Damascus has never been destroyed. Ever. Ever. They have a long-standing policy. If they think they're going to lose a war, they open the gates and they surrender. Yeah. Damascus is the oldest continuously occupied city in the world. The walls around Damascus have never been broken down, ever. Throughout the long history of Damascus, whenever a strong force appeared at the walls, they would open the gates in order to avoid destruction. I get it. The wall where Paul was let down to escape from Damascus, you know the story, they let him over the wall. That's still standing. It's still there. You might remember the story. It's in Acts 9:25 that the disciples took him by night and let him down through the wall in a large basket. The Syrians opened their gates to King David when he attacked. Assyria, Babylon, Persia. And so the walls and the buildings of Damascus were never destroyed. Did you know that there's still a King David Street in Damascus? From when he took over. Yeah, it's still there. I even looked it up on a map. It's like a Google World, Google Earth. They named a street after King David when he conquered them, and it's been there ever since. It's a country ruled by Muslims, but that street is still there, King David Street. Do you guys remember Straight Street in the New Testament? Straight Street. Yeah, in Acts 9 it says, in Damascus there was a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called to him in a vision, Ananias. He answered, yes, Lord. The Lord told him, go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him. Come and place his, why does it say, I thought your hands. So Ananias, come and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Isn't it your hands on him? He didn't take his hands and put them on. He put his hands on, right? I don't know. I think it's a typo. Okay, so that was Straight Street. You remember? Now look at here. There it is. There's Straight Street. That's the same street. See it? It's kind of straight. That's why they call it Straight Street.
The street's not normally straight.
No, yeah, not down in not in most of the Middle East.
Oh, really?
They're very windy. Same in Jerusalem. In the old city, they're all very windy. But there it is. That's the street that was mentioned in the New Testament, in Acts. Isn't that crazy? So it's still there, good as new. Oh, here it is on Google Maps. Where is it at? I think it's there. It is. Look at that, Damascus Straight Street. Can you see it? It's on Google Maps. 2,000 years old. There's that street. Bizarre, huh? So I couldn't find a picture of King David Street. It's a smaller street, but I believe it's actually in the Jewish quarter somewhere. Here's a satellite picture of the Jewish quarter. It actually says that on Google Earth. See what it says?
Yeah.
Jewish quarter. This whole part right here is the Jewish quarter. You wouldn't even think they'd have a Jewish quarter anymore, right? You'd think they'd have killed them all. But there it is. The ancient gate to Damascus is still standing and is even still in use. Here's a picture of the Bab Sharki. Bab in Arabic means door. That's the old gate. Still standing there. Look at that. That's over 2,000 years old. It's amazing. So Bab means door or gate in Arabic. I used to have to tell my Palestinian friends, Sakkar Bab means shut the door, because they'd walk in and they'd never shut the door behind them. So I'd say Sakkar Bab, which means close the door. In India, I'd have to say Daicheze Gateway Indi, which means the same thing, shut the door. So we know that the city of Damascus has never been destroyed. Thus, we are sure that this passage is an unfulfilled prophecy which must come to pass before the millennium. Verse 2 says, the cities of Aroer will also be deserted. What that tells us is that other cities in Syria, besides Damascus, will be depopulated. For those who don't really know where Syria is, here's a map. So here's Israel down here. You see that? You go up, there's Lebanon, and all this over here is Syria. You see that? And there's Damascus, kind of catty corner to Beirut. And Damascus is their center, their, what do you call it? Capital. Auror today in Arabic is called Wadi al-Mujib. Let's see if I can show it to you. Oh boy, that's even worse up there. Let me see. I need my glasses. I can't see it. It's down by the Dead Sea. I'll show you the area. I can't read it well enough, but I think it's... This is the Dead Sea right here. So you can see this little red box. It's in that area. So that's in Jordan. I should have brought my glasses. So back to our bigger map here. From Damascus to Wadi al-Mujib is quite a long way. Right? So you got Wadi al-Mujib down here by the Dead Sea. And Damascus, I mean, that's almost the entire length of Israel. You see that? So that's the area it's talking about there. It's from Damascus to Wadi al-Mujib is a long ways, but that's when it helps to know Hebrew. And we've talked about this before. In Hebrew, I could say in the street without it actually being in the street, right? It could be beside the street. It could be beside the street. I can also say from Damascus to Jerusalem without it meaning all the way to Jerusalem, but rather towards Jerusalem. And that's what it means here. It means towards Auror. It doesn't have to be all the way down there. How far is it is it actually talking about? We don't know, but it's towards the south. It's towards Auror. Verse 3, Ephraim will have no defenses. Damasek will cease to rule, and Aram survivors will share the fate of Israel's finest sons, says Adonai Zevaot. So the name Ephraim is often just another name for Israel, as opposed to what the two-house folks think. It's also another name for another name for Israel, another name for the Jewish people, and that's all it is in this passage. It's another name. The name Aram there means Syria. Aram was the son of Shem, as it says in Genesis 10:22. The Arameans spoke. Guess what? What do you think they spoke? There you go. Aramaic. Aramean, Aramaic. That's where the word Aramaic comes from, by the way. Aram was the son of Shem. Arameans are the people. Aramaic is the language. Aram is a region mentioned in the Bible located in Syria. Aram stretched from the Lebanese mountains eastward across the Euphrates, including the Habur River, the valley, in northwestern Mesopotamia on the border of Assyria. So this passage is using different names to mean Israel and Syria here. It's like me saying from Hollywood to the Big Apple. You know, when I say that, I could mean the whole United States, right? Ephraim will have no defenses, it says. Damasek will cease to rule, and Aram survivors will share the fate of Israel's finest sons, says Adonai Tsevaot. So where it says that Ephraim will have no defense, what it says in Hebrew is that their defense will be eradicated. That's what it says there. In other words, their military might is gone. Syria is also in a bad way after this war. It says, when that day comes, Yaakov's glory will wane, and his full body will grow thin. Yaakov is also another name for Israel, so it's saying they will become weak. The Israelis surviving this war will be few in number. Israel starts the war with many people. At that time, it's fat. Then it winds up with few survivors. It becomes lean. Verse 5 is when the harvester collects the standing grain, reaping the ears of grain with his arm. Yes, as they glean the grain in the Rephaim valley. So it's saying here that the number of people left in Israel, left alive, will be as few in number as the gleanings of wheat stalks with heads of grain after the main harvest. So you can begin to understand why I'm one of the very few Messianics who doesn't encourage making aliyah. Right?
Right.
Aliyah means emigrating to Israel specifically and becoming a citizen there. So I don't encourage everybody to make aliyah. Are you with me, Cody? Okay. I don't encourage it because if my dad is right about these prophecies, and I think he is, then that means a lot of people are going to get killed at that time. So if we're in the end days, the last thing you want to do is go to Israel. Right?
Right.
I don't think we're in the last days, but I'm also not willing to bet any of my friends' lives on it. You know, either unless I know they are completely committed to God, because then I know God will protect them.
All yawning is going to Israel pretty much, right?
Yes.
Is that, I mean, like, just vacationing there or just going?
Moving.
Oh, moving.
Yes. Aliyah is becoming a citizen and moving there.
What is it translated to?
Aliyah?
Yeah. Or is it
I don't know.
more of instead of a word, it's just the
It's a concept. It's like immigration, but it's specifically to Israel. Aliyah, it sounds, I think it's going home to Yah,
sounds like it.
going to God. So it's his land. So it's like going to Aliyah. I haven't broke it down before. I don't know. I don't know.
Dennis is really good, Dennis.
What does Aliyah mean, Dennis?
That one I don't know.
Aliyah.
He used to break up all
All I run into refers to going up to.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, because the law, the verb can be ascend or go up. So ascending to God or something?
Al is upon. Like al panay. Al. Ali. I'm going upon. Could be going up to. You can look at it that way. Going up to God. I'll bet you anything. Let me look it up. I'll bet you that's what it is. I'd have to see the spelling, but I bet you that's it. Hebrew. Going up. Ascending. Ali. All upon. It is. It's what I said. It means to ascend. To ascend. Yeah, it's like we say alpanate to home, and you know how we say in the Genesis 1 when you weren't in the Hebrew classes. In our Hebrew class we do Genesis 1. It says alpanate to home. It means going up or going upon. Yeah, well, that's a good question. Good question. All right. So if God tells someone to move to Israel, that's different. Then you have to go. It's always safer to be where God wants you to be. But if you're not clearly hearing from God, then don't move there. Visit, yes. Make a pilgrimage, of course. But don't move there. Verse 6 says, yet gleanings will be left, as when beating an olive tree. 2 or 3 olives at the very top, 4 or 5 on its fruitful branches, says Adonai, the God of Israel. So what's that saying is there's going to be few Israelis left alive. But there will be survivors. But the human destruction isn't complete. It isn't total. Verse 7, in that day a man will look to his maker, and his eyes will have respect for the Holy One of Israel. So the Jews that fully turn to the Lord will be the only survivors of this war with Syria. God always protects those who follow him completely. God promises us in Isaiah 43:2, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. But if a friend of mine who's a believer but not Torah observant, I would tell them not to move to Israel. If they're not Torah observant, they just don't have the strength that's needed. But I have a lot of Christian friends come and say, oh, I want to go move to Israel. Yeah, not a good idea. Yeah. Now, Israel doesn't need a bunch of Christians, for one, right? Two, they're not going to make it. If you're not Torah observant, you're not going to be strong enough to handle that country. It's an overwhelming country. Spiritually, people just, they don't do well. People used to come over. We had an apartment. We rented all the apartments in an apartment building. And so we kept them available for people that came to Israel who felt they were called to the land. Very, very few of them worked out. They usually end up going home within a few weeks. They go, oh, I'm moving to Israel. God's called me to the Holy Land. Okay. We'll give you a free apartment. Whatever you need, we're here to help. Whatever you need, we're there. They'd last 2-3 weeks and they'd leave. The oppression there is immense. Spiritual oppression. Spiritual oppression, which means like, first, it's a very difficult country, just on a physical level. And it's not, and nothing is easy. You want to do something, you want to go pay your, it's a little bit better now than it was. You want to go pay your electric bill, that takes a day. You don't just write off a check and put it in the mail and off you go. You had to go down to the office. First you had to find the office, right? Then you go down to the office and you stand in line for about 2 to 3 hours. Then after you do that, you argue with the guy for at least another half an hour because they never got it right. So you'd argue with that guy for another half hour. Plus you're taking the bus down. Not everybody has cars there. So you're taking the bus, so you got to wait an hour for the bus. It's a half an hour to an hour just to get to the other side of town, right? It's not like here where you just zip right through. It's a day. You want to do. That's what we always told it when the new people came. If you want to do something, count it as a day. So that gets on you, wears you down after a while. The people are not helpful. We're talking about a bunch of Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors. They're not friendly. They're very abrupt. There's no niceties. It's survival. That's the way they learned in the Holocaust. You get the last piece of bread or you die. So if you want to get on the bus, it's elbows and arms all the way. Old ladies there. If you sit back like an American and you can say, oh, you go ahead, ma'am, you go first, you ain't getting on the bus that day. Oh, it was a nightmare. That's why I was so glad to get out of there. Oh, I couldn't wait to get out of Israel. And everybody says, oh, Israel's wonderful. That means they went there on a tour. They stayed in 5-star hotels. They don't know nothing about Israel. They got to eat American food. They don't understand what it's really like there. If they say, oh, it's a tough country, you don't want to go there, then that means they probably did live there. You know? So and it's spiritually oppressive. I've told you the story before. When we used to be on the tours, I'd sit in the back when I was a kid, and there's this one bend before you can even see Jerusalem. And we'd be coming around that area. Every time you'd hear somebody say, did you feel that? They'd say that. You'd be like, what? What feel what? I don't know. Did you feel that? No. Well, some people did, some people didn't. So I used to tell my mom, I said, you got to come back, you got to hear this, because she didn't believe me. Sure enough, we get right around that area, the next tour we took. So, that felt weird. Did you feel that? Because there's a spiritual oppression. The enemy is nowhere concentrated more than he is in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where the throne of God used to sit. And if you want to be God, You got to take over where his throne was. It's got to be your throne. The three major religions of the world are centered in Jerusalem. Why do you think there's always problems there? All right? There's nothing special about Jerusalem. It's a little chunk in the middle of the desert. Nothing special about it in the natural. But we used to even tell I had my best friend when I was there. We used to tell him and his family every 3 months, 3 to 6 months at the most, get out of Jerusalem for a couple weeks. Clear your head. Get out of this town. He didn't do it. Soon after I came back to the States, he went behind my apartment building and killed himself. He was a missionary to Israel. We told him, get out every 3 to 6 months or you'll go nuts. The spiritual oppression is very, very heavy. It's not like here. Yeah, it's bizarre. So if a friend of mine's a believer, not Torah observant, and I'd tell them not to move to Israel. If they're not Torah observant, they just don't have that strength that's needed. Keeping God's laws produces strength, whether you know it or not. And you need to know that. Now let's read our second passage, and we'll look at it verse by verse, and we'll compare the two together. Zechariah 13:7. Awake, sword against my shepherd, against the man who is close to me, declares the Lord Almighty. Strike the shepherd. If you do that, the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. Sounds kind of bad, the little ones. And the whole land, declares the Lord. 2/3 will be struck down and perish, yet 1/3 will be left in it. This third I will put into the fire. I'll refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them and say, they are my people. And they will say, the Lord is our God. So let's do some translational work. Verse 7 says that I will turn my hand against the little ones. I don't know about you, but that translation makes it sound like God's going after the kids. He's going after the little ones. No, he's not going after the children. The Hebrew word translated little ones is za'ar. It means to grow insignificant or to become ignoble. It has nothing to do with youth. So let's get that out of the way first. So here's a better translation. I'll put it up for you. Awake, O sword, against the shepherd, against the one who was my neighbor, says the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and then I will turn my hand against the ignoble ones. Okay? Not like children. Terrible translation. So God strikes at the leaders in Israel at that time, and they become scattered. In the fulfillment of this prophecy, not only the Israeli leaders will be smitten by God, the ignoble ones in his circle of corruption will also be removed. That's what it's saying. Verse 8, and the whole land, declares the Lord, 2/3 will be struck down and perish, yet 1/3 will be left in it. So 2/3 of the Israelis will die. 2/3, that's most of the country. They're going to die. And 1/3 will be left. Verse 9 says, this third I will put into the fire. So they're going to go through some tough times. They'll survive, but they're going to go through tough times. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They'll call on my name, and I'll answer them, and I will say, they are my people. And they will say, the Lord is our God. So the Israelis that survive this devastating war with Israel will all turn to the Lord, and they will come to know Yeshua as the Messiah.
So it's the ones in Israel that aren't believers.
Yes.
So that are going to die?
Yes. 2/3. They're all unsaved at that point. The whole country's still unsaved. We haven't got to even to Daniel's 7-year period yet. We haven't got to the Great Revival. Right? This will be part of the Great Revival at the end. We have the war first. So 2/3 die. 1/3 say, oh my gosh, let's turn to God. And that kind of kicks off the Great Revival. Because they're desperate. I mean, can you imagine 2/3 of Israel gone? 2/3 of the people. We're talking millions. Millions. They disappear. The rest of Israel's like, God help us. And then he tests them. He puts them through the fire. How do we know that they come to Yeshua? How do we know that they become believers? It says, they will call on my name. If the Bible says they will call on my name, it's talking about Yeshua. How do we know that? Because it says this in Philippians. Therefore God, speaking of the Father, also has highly exalted Yeshua and given him the name which is above every name.
I know in Hebrew, when they're saying like something like the, it's specifically talking about something certain, not
That's
something
right.
general.
That's exactly right. It's there's a word for that. It's the definitive article.
Yeah. Yep. I
The
remember.
definitive article. You're right. That at the name of Yeshua, every knee should bow, of those in heaven, and those on earth, under and all those under the earth. So that's the name. We also read in Acts 4:2, nor is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. So how are these two passages linked together? The only other prophecy concerning a war in Israel that lists the same heavy loss of life, plus the removal of leadership and the survivors turning to the Lord, is the war described that we read earlier in Isaiah 17 with Damascus. It's the only one. There's one other part I want to point out to you, and this is simply speculation. I remember my dad telling me about this war a few years back. Um, I remember way before this. I don't know why I said a few years back, because I remember this when I was a kid. Uh, we read that after, well, maybe he could be talking. I could be talking about we all knew about this war a long time ago. Anytime anything happened in Syria, every one of the believers over there, we just be like, "Is this it? Is this it?" It wasn't just my dad's teaching. Uh, there's a lot of people that knew about this. But he kind of expanded it, kind of put in other verses and kind of figured it out better. But I remember him telling me about this. We read that after the destruction of Damascus, it says this, flocks will lie down with no one to make them afraid. So what kind of war is this to where after this huge battle between Israel and Damascus, and after Israel retaliates and Damascus is in ruins, but yet it leaves all the flocks okay? What kind of war is this? Because it says the flocks will be out grazing in the fields. What kind of war does? It's not atomic. If it was an atomic war, Damascus hits Israel, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv. Jerusalem fire Tel Aviv. Israel fires back from Dimona, and the sheep are still out grazing in the grass. What kind of war is this to where this huge battle between Israel and Damascus, and after Israel retaliates and Damascus in ruins, but yet leaves all the flocks okay? So it's obviously not atomic. Everything in and around Damascus would be dead in that case. They'd be shadows. That's all, they'd be shadows. So what is it? So my dad's hypothesis is just a theory, is that Israel retaliates with what's called a sonar bomb. You ever heard of those? Sonar bomb. Really? Now, even my dad was, well, was he the first one to teach? I don't know if maybe he was. Maybe he was the first one to teach. Everybody knew it in Israel. But, anyways, all the believers in Israel were very well aware of this war with Syria, and they were expecting it. It's common knowledge now. And it's what we talk about around the water cooler there. We all trust in God, but at the same time, anytime something happened in Syria, we'd freeze because it's in the back of our minds, and we all know what kind of devastation it brings to our country. Now, about sonar bombs, the U.S. Navy has types of sonar bombs that they've already used before, but not to the same extent that Israel is currently developing. What a sonar bomb does is it reaches a certain frequency, and theoretically it can shatter anything. It can even shatter rocks. It's kind of like the old commercial, like where an opera singer hits a certain high note and then the glass shatters. It's the same principle. And just like the commercial, even though the opera singer hits that note, it doesn't affect the singer, right? She hits that note, glass shatters. She doesn't fall over dead, and her ears don't start bleeding, or her eardrums don't burst out of her ears. That's kind of graphic. Uh, Likewise, Israel could set this bomb to only affect the buildings that people are in, so that they would collapse and kill everybody in them, while the sheep still remain out in the pasture unharmed and unaffected.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sonar bombs. It's only one possible theory, but it does seem the most likely to me so far. Also, you, as always, want to be careful what you read online about the war with Syria. There's a lot of crazy stuff on the web. And like I said many times before, don't get your education from the internet. It does have some great tools that you can use, but not everything you read online is the truth. Go figure. And concerning the prophetic war between Israel and Syria, they've got some crazy stuff out there. Okay, let's review. This way. There are 4 major battles yet to come concerning Israel. 4. 2, the first end time war is the war with Syria. Is he coming, Lovey? Okay. 3, the second war is the war with Turkey and Libya and so forth at the Dead Sea. 4, the third war.
God and Magog?
Which one?
Was that God and Magog?
Yes.
Third one?
Third, the second war.
Right.
Yeah. The first end time war is with Syria. The second war is the war with Turkey. That's Gog and Magog. All right? The third war is in Jerusalem. And the last war is in Armageddon. Right? Armageddon, the Mount of Rendezvous, which is Mount Zion, also in Jerusalem. It's not in Megiddo. 6, Isaiah 17 and Zechariah 13 are both talking about this war with Syria. 7, Damascus has never been destroyed, so we know this passage is still yet to come, so we know it's prophetic. 8, King David Street and Straight Street still exist in Damascus. 9, a third of the Israelis will die in this battle, but a remnant will be saved. 10, God isn't going after the little ones, but he will be going after translators. Hope you enjoyed the teaching. The war with Syria. Straight and to the point. Is he here yet, Lovey? Well, you keep telling me. I don't know what time it is. Oh, 10 more minutes. Okay. So there you go. Any questions? Makes more sense. It's a puzzle. The whole thing is a puzzle. That's what it's supposed to be. So every day we learn more theology, we put in another piece of the puzzle. Little piece of prophecy, little piece of first century Judaism, little piece of hermeneutics, little piece of Pretty soon you don't have all the pieces, but you start to say, you know what? I think I know what this picture is. Right? And that's what you're looking for. You want to at least get the general idea of what the Bible's talking about. Salvation, there's another piece. All these pieces, they start coming together. But then you get a piece and it doesn't fit anywhere. You got to tear the whole puzzle apart again. Say, well, yeah, it is a picture of an elephant, but I thought it was an African elephant. No, it turns out it's an Indian elephant. So I got to start all over again. So you start all over and you start, well, the tail, I remember the tail went here, that fits. And this, I remember the eye was here, that fits. Every piece has to fit. If it doesn't, you got to start over again. And when you get enough pieces where you say, look, this is all working, then you call it a comprehensive theology. That's the word for it. If it doesn't make sense, then you're just like, okay, do over. And we've been doing that for 40 years. Now our picture is pretty solid. So, but if something happens, say more scrolls are found at the Dead Sea, and it may change our whole picture again. We go, crud, let's go back, start over. Okay, that still fits. That one doesn't. That one does. That one doesn't. And you start over. What pastors do is like, if you get a piece that doesn't fit, it's gonna fit. Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? That doesn't even fit. Oh, it fits. Let me tell you how it fits. Then they start going through these circles, these jumping through these hoops. Pretty soon they got so many pieces that don't fit, and you're like, this is a bunch of crap. Oh no, it's not crap. This is what Jesus said. No, it's not. They won't tear their puzzle down. And the Protestants do that. They got it from the Pope. The Pope decided his word is infallible, so now the pieces have to fit. You can't do that. You have to be willing to tear the puzzle down and start all over. Everything has to work. And I'm not afraid to do that. If I'm wrong, I mean, I did it before. I went around preaching at all the churches that, we didn't have to keep the law when I was a Christian. If I can come out of that, I can come out of anything. If I have to tear it down again, I'll tear it down again. But so far, this is where the evidence leads, and that's all we can go on. What does the evidence say? So, good. Hope you enjoyed it, Dennis. Any questions?